The door to the interview room creaked open, and I glanced up from my notes, my fingers stilling over the polished wooden desk. The moment she stepped inside, my breath caught in my throat. Rebecca Adams. My entire body tensed. It was as if the past had just walked through the door, dressed in a perfectly pressed blazer and high heels, her blonde hair styled in a sleek ponytail. She looked confident, poised, like she owned the room. But she didn't. Not anymore. "Good morning," she said, her voice bright and professional as she approached the desk. "It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for considering me for this role." She had no idea who I was. No flicker of recognition in her eyes. Of course, she wouldn't recognize me. I wasn't the same girl from high school. Back then, I was overweight, awkward, and invisible, except when she made sure everyone saw me. Rebecca had been the queen bee, the untouchable golden girl who could do no wrong. I was the target, the joke, the one she tore down to boost her own popularity. But time had changed everything. I was no longer the shy, insecure girl she used to torment. I had worked hard to build myself into someone new, someone confident, respected, and, most importantly, powerful. And today, I held her future in my hands. I forced a neutral smile, extending my hand. "Welcome, Rebecca," I said smoothly. She shook my hand firmly, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I gestured toward the chair across from my desk. "Please, have a seat." She sat down, straightening her blazer, her face composed and eager. I took a moment to study her. Rebecca Adams, the girl who used to call me Whale in front of the entire school cafeteria, was now sitting across from me, hoping for a job. At my company. I was the hiring manager. And I was about to make sure she never got past this interview. I picked up her resume, pretending to scan it while I gathered my thoughts. I already knew everything about her application. I had reviewed it the moment it landed on my desk, long before I realized who she was. Back then, when I first saw her name, I had felt a strange sense of familiarity, but I hadn't immediately connected the dots. But when I saw her in person, it all clicked. The same arrogant tilt of her chin. The same self-assured smirk that used to make my stomach turn in high school. She thought this was just another interview. She had no idea she was about to experience a reckoning. I placed the resume down and clasped my hands together. "So, Rebecca," I said, keeping my voice measured, "why do you want to work here?" She smiled, eager and confident. "This company has always been my dream workplace. I've admired the way you innovate, how you prioritize leadership and excellence. I've spent years developing my skills for an opportunity like this." A dream workplace? I bit back a smirk. How ironic. She used to dream of ruining my life. And now, she was dreaming of working for me. I leaned back in my chair, watching her closely. "You seem confident in your abilities." She nodded. "I am. I've worked incredibly hard to get here." Hard work. Did she know what hard work really was? Hard work was picking up the pieces after years of bullying. Hard work was learning to love yourself when someone had spent years making you feel unlovable. Hard work was pushing through self-doubt, working tirelessly to prove yourself in a world that had once told you that you were nothing. I smiled coolly. "Let's test that confidence, then." Her shoulders straightened. "Of course." I reached for my notes and flipped the page. "Tell me about a time you handled a workplace conflict." She hesitated, her brows furrowing slightly. "Well, there was a situation at my previous job where a miscommunication led to a disagreement between two team members. I stepped in to mediate and help them reach a solution that benefited everyone." "Interesting," I mused, tapping my pen against the desk. "And what was the final resolution?" She faltered for a second. "Well, we encouraged better communication strategies and worked together to prevent similar conflicts in the future." Vague. Weak. I had already gone through her background. I knew exactly where she was vulnerable. I could see the tiny flickers of uncertainty in her expression, the small cracks forming in her confident demeanor. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. I fired off another question. "And how do you handle criticism?" She exhaled, regaining her composure. "I welcome constructive criticism. I believe it's important to grow and improve in any role." I smiled slightly. "Interesting. And what about unfair criticism? How do you handle being singled out or treated unfairly?" For a split second, I saw something shift in her expression. A flicker of unease. I let the silence stretch, watching her struggle to find an answer. Finally, she cleared her throat and replied, I try to remain professional and not take it personally. Professional. That was rich, coming from someone who had spent years publicly humiliating me for sport. I nodded, as if satisfied with her response, but I wasn't done yet. Tell me, Rebecca, I said, keeping my voice casual. Have you ever been in a situation where you regretted your actions? Perhaps something from your past that you would handle differently now. She blinked, caught off guard. She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. Well, I think everyone has moments they wish they handled differently. But I believe in moving forward, not dwelling on the past. I smiled. She had no idea that her past had just walked back into her life. I spent the next 30 minutes tearing through her resume, picking apart her answers, pushing her, challenging her, making her second-guess herself. By the end of the interview, she was visibly tense. Her confident posture had slumped slightly, her fingers twisting in her lap. The self-assured smirk she had walked in with was long gone. I leaned back, watching her squirm. Thank you for your time, Rebecca, I said smoothly, closing my folder. We'll be in touch. She let out a quiet breath of relief and nodded. I really appreciate the opportunity. I extended my hand again. She shook it, her grip weaker than before. As she walked out, I watched her go, a slow, victorious smile curling my lips. She had no idea what was coming next. Rebecca Adams had spent years making me feel powerless. Now, it was my turn to show her what power really looked like. The moment the door closed behind Rebecca, I exhaled slowly, letting my shoulders relax. For the past hour, I had kept my expression neutral, my tone professional. I had played my role as the hiring manager flawlessly. But inside, I had been fighting a storm of emotions, rage, satisfaction, and something deeper, something I didn't want to admit. The past had a way of sneaking up on you when you least expected it. I turned my chair slightly, gazing out of the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office. The city skyline stretched before me, the streets below bustling with life. From this high up, the people looked small, just like I had once felt in high school. Small. Insignificant. Powerless. I clenched my jaw. Not anymore. A soft knock on my door pulled me from my thoughts. Come in, I called. The door opened, and Emily, my assistant, peeked inside. Hey, just checking in. How did the interview go? I turned back to my desk, fingers drumming against the polished wood. It went exactly as I expected. Emily stepped inside, tilting her head. That bad? I gave her a wry smile. Let's just say she's not a good fit for the company. Emily sat down across from me, curiosity flickering in her eyes. That was quick. You're usually thorough about second rounds. I hesitated for a second. Emily and I had worked together for years, and she knew me well enough to sense when something was off. But I hadn't told her the full story yet, hadn't told anyone, really. Because if I did, I'd have to say Rebecca's name out loud. And that would make this all feel too real. Too personal. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Do you ever think about high school? Emily raised an eyebrow. Not if I can help it. Why? I hesitated before saying, let's just say, today, high school walked into my office. Her brows furrowed. You lost me. I tapped my pen against my desk, debating whether to tell her. But then I realized, I wanted to say it out loud. I wanted someone else to know. I set the pen down and looked directly at her. The woman I just interviewed, Rebecca Adams, was my high school bully. Emily's eyes widened. Wait. That Rebecca? I nodded. She exhaled sharply. Holy crap. Yeah, I muttered, rubbing my temples. Emily leaned forward, intrigued. Did she recognize you? I shook my head. Not even a little. Her lips parted in disbelief. You're kidding. After everything she did. I let out a bitter chuckle. You'd be surprised how easy it is for people like her to forget. But the people they hurt? We never forget. Emily folded her arms, shaking her head. She used to make your life miserable. I swallowed hard. Yeah, she did. She was the reason I had spent most of high school hiding in the bathroom during lunch. The reason I dreaded walking into the cafeteria, knowing that at any moment, someone might laugh or whisper about me. She was the one who had made sure my teenage years were filled with humiliation. And now, she was sitting across from me, needing something from me. It was poetic, really. Emily studied me for a moment. So, what are you going to do? I gave her a slow smile. Make sure she never works here. She smirked. Savage. I love it. But then, her smirk faded slightly. Are you sure you don't want to just let it go? My smile tightened. She never let me go. Emily exhaled, nodding. Fair enough. I turned back to my laptop, already drafting the rejection email in my head. She thinks this company is her dream job. I'm going to make sure she never gets the chance. Emily stood. Well, if you need me to shred her resume, just say the word. I chuckled. Noted. As she walked out, I stared at my screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The logical part of me knew I had already won. I was successful. I was respected. I had built a life that high school me could only dream of. But the emotional part of me? It wanted more. Because Rebecca hadn't just been cruel, she had been relentless. I thought back to senior year, to the moment that had burned itself into my memory forever. The cafeteria. The tray of food in my hands. Rebecca's voice, loud enough for everyone to hear. Careful, guys. The whale is about to eat the whole school. Laughter. Snickers. The sound of my own heart shattering as I turned and ran, leaving my lunch behind. I closed my eyes for a moment, swallowing the lump in my throat. No. I wasn't that girl anymore. I opened my eyes and started typing. Subject, application update, marketing manager position. Dear Rebecca, thank you for taking the time to interview with us. After careful consideration, we have decided to move forward with other candidates whose qualifications align more closely with our needs. We appreciate your interest in our company and wish you the best in your career. Sincerely. My name. I read it over once, then hit send. It was done. Rebecca Adams wasn't getting her dream job. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had taken back something she had stolen from me. The email was sent. The decision was final. Rebecca Adams would never set foot in my company. I should have felt completely satisfied. But as I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, a strange feeling settled in my chest. It wasn't guilt, not exactly. It was something else. A whisper of unfinished business. Revenge wasn't as clean as I thought it would be. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. Emily stepped in, her expression unreadable. You might want to see this. I frowned. What is it? She handed me her phone. Rebecca just posted something online. I took the phone, scanning the screen. It was a post on LinkedIn. Rejection stings, but what stings more is when people don't even give you a real chance. Today, I was reminded that no matter how hard you work, sometimes, your fate is in the hands of someone who doesn't care. But I won't let this stop me. I'll keep pushing forward. My stomach twisted. Emily crossed her arms. What do you think? I handed her the phone back. I think she has no idea who I am. Emily hesitated. Or she does and she's playing innocent. I scoffed. No. If she knew, she wouldn't just be posting cryptic messages online. She'd be calling me out directly. Emily nodded slowly. So, what now? I turned back to my laptop. Nothing. She moves on. I move on. But Emily didn't leave. When I looked up, she was studying me. You sure you're okay? I hesitated before saying, I got what I wanted. She tilted her head. Did you? I frowned. What do you mean? She sat down across from me. I mean, if this was really about closure, then why do you still look like something's bothering you? I opened my mouth to respond, but I didn't have an answer. Because she was right. I had gotten my revenge. I had blocked Rebecca from her dream job. But instead of feeling victorious, there was a strange hollowness inside me. Emily sighed. Look, I'm not saying she didn't deserve it. She was awful to you. But I don't know. Maybe this isn't over. I didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew she was right. That evening, I tried to put it behind me. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and curled up on the couch, determined to let it go. But then my phone buzzed. A notification. A friend request. From her. Rebecca Adams. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. She hadn't remembered me in the interview. But now? Now she was reaching out. Slowly, I tapped on her profile. Her picture was polished, like she had spent years curating the perfect professional image. But I knew what was underneath. I knew who she really was. And yet, why was she adding me now? My thumb hovered over the accept button. I shouldn't. But I did. Within seconds, a message popped up. Rebecca, hey. I know this is random, but I think we went to high school together. Just realized after the interview. Small world. I stared at it. She remembered. The question was, what did she want? I stared at Rebecca's message, my mind racing. 4 years, she had haunted my memories, a ghost from my past that I thought I had finally exorcised. And yet, here she was, messaging me as if we were long-lost friends. A part of me wanted to ignore her. But another part, the one that had spent years carrying the weight of her cruelty, wanted to know what she was up to. I took a deep breath and typed back. Me, small world, indeed. I hit send and waited. Almost immediately, 3 dots appeared on the screen, signaling that she was typing. Rebecca, I feel so dumb for not recognizing you earlier. It's been ages. How have you been? I narrowed my eyes at the screen. Was she seriously acting like we had been casual acquaintances instead of predator and prey? I refused to let her rewrite history. Me, I've been good. And you? Another quick response. Rebecca, oh, you know how life is, ups and downs. I was really hoping to get that job, but I guess it wasn't meant to be. Tough market out there, here? I smirked at my phone. She was fishing. Trying to gauge whether I had been the one who rejected her. Me, yeah, competition is tough. A pause. Then. Rebecca, so. I have to ask. You were part of the hiring process, right? I let my fingers hover over the keyboard. There it was. The real reason she had messaged me. She wanted to know if I had been the one who pulled the strings. I considered my options. I could lie and brush it off. Or I could let her know exactly who she was dealing with. I chose the latter. Me, I was the hiring manager, actually. The dots appeared again, then stopped. I imagined her sitting wherever she was, realization dawning on her. I waited. Finally, her response came. Rebecca, wow. I didn't realize. That's crazy. I leaned back, amused. That was the best she could come up with? Me, it is, isn't it? A long pause. Then. Rebecca, be honest, was I rejected because of you? I read the message twice. She had dropped the fake pleasantries now. I let a slow smile creep across my face before responding. Me, does it matter? She saw the message immediately but didn't reply. I imagined her frustration, the gears in her mind turning. She knew. She had to know. And I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of an explanation. I set my phone down, feeling something close to victory. But as I took a sip of my wine, a thought crept into my mind, one I hadn't considered before. Rebecca was persistent. She didn't take losses lightly. And now, she knew exactly who had cost her the job. Had I just started a war? The next day at work, I tried to push Rebecca from my mind. I had more important things to focus on. But life had other plans. Around lunchtime, I stepped out of the office for some fresh air. The city streets were bustling, the hum of traffic and conversations filling the air. And then, a voice. Wow. Fancy seeing you here. I turned sharply. Rebecca. She stood just a few feet away, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. For a split second, I saw the high school version of her, the girl who had laughed at me, humiliated me. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I straightened my shoulders. Rebecca. She gave me a tight smile. I figured we'd run into each other eventually. Small world, right? I didn't respond. I just studied her, waiting. She tilted her head. So, you're really not going to say it? I raised an eyebrow. Say what? She took a step closer. That you got your revenge. I let the silence stretch between us. Then I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Her lips curled slightly. You do, though. You knew who I was the second you saw my application. And you made sure I didn't get that job. I didn't deny it. Instead, I said, if you weren't qualified, that's not my problem. Her jaw clenched, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something behind her eyes, anger, maybe even desperation. You know, she said, her voice quieter now, people change. I let out a small laugh. Do they? She looked away for a second, then back at me. Look, I'm not here to fight. She hesitated. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I blinked. That, I hadn't expected. Rebecca Adams, apologizing? I folded my arms. For what, exactly? She swallowed. For how I treated you back then. I was a different person. I was young and stupid, and she sighed. I didn't realize how much damage I was doing. I studied her, searching for cracks in her performance. But for the first time, she actually looked sincere. Still, I wasn't about to let her off the hook. You called me disgusting, I said flatly. You made me feel like I wasn't worth existing in the same space as you. Her face fell. I know. Do you? I asked. Or do you just regret that karma finally caught up to you? She exhaled. I deserve that. I watched her carefully. This was new territory. For years, I had imagined this moment. Rebecca on the other side of power, realizing that the person she had belittled had the ability to crush her dreams. And I had done it. But now, looking at her standing there, apologizing, I felt something I hadn't expected. Conflicted. This wasn't the smug, cruel girl from high school. This was a woman who had been humbled. Rebecca hesitated before saying, I really wanted that job. I raised an eyebrow. And you expected me to help you. She gave a weak smile. I guess I was hoping you'd believe people can change. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I believed that. Finally, I said, good luck, Rebecca. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there. But something told me this wouldn't be the last time we crossed paths. I should have felt triumphant. I had walked away from Rebecca Adams, leaving her with the weight of her past actions. I had made her face the reality that she wasn't going to get everything she wanted, not anymore. But something didn't sit right with me. Her apology had been unexpected. It wasn't the smug, manipulative tone I had anticipated. For a moment, just a brief one, I had seen genuine regret in her eyes. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to shake the conversation from my mind, burying myself in work. But by the time I got home, my thoughts were still tangled in the past. I sat on my couch, a glass of wine in my hand, scrolling mindlessly through social media. My feed was filled with the usual, news articles, vacation pictures, motivational quotes. And then, as if the universe was taunting me, a post from Rebecca popped up. It was another vague message. Sometimes, life reminds you that the past is never really in the past. You just have to decide what to do with it. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. Was that about me? I clicked on her profile, skimming through her recent activity. There was nothing else that seemed directed at me, but something told me she wasn't done. And I was right. The next morning, as I arrived at work, Emily was waiting at my desk with a curious expression. You got an invitation, she said, holding up a sleek black envelope. I frowned. An invitation. She handed it to me. It was left at the front desk. No return address. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a simple white card with elegant lettering. Let's talk. No grudges. Just closure. Attached was an address to a cafe downtown and a time, 7 p.m. I stared at the card, my heart pounding. Emily asked, peering over my shoulder. Then she groaned. Please don't tell me it's who I think it is. I sighed. Rebecca. Emily's eyebrows shot up. And you're not throwing that in the trash, why exactly? I placed the card on my desk. I don't know. I guess. I'm curious. Emily gave me a look. Curious? About what? She bullied you for years, you got your revenge, and now she suddenly wants to meet up for closure? That sounds like a trap. I exhaled. I don't think it's a trap, but it's weird, right? She's acting like she actually wants to make amends. Emily folded her arms. And you believe that? I hesitated. I don't know. But part of me wants to hear what she has to say. Emily shook her head. This is a bad idea. Maybe it was. But I was going anyway. At exactly 7 p.m., I arrived at the cafe. It was a quiet, upscale spot, not the kind of place I would have imagined Rebecca choosing. She was already there, seated at a corner table, sipping from a cup of coffee. When she saw me, she smiled, nervously, almost as if she wasn't sure I'd actually show up. I took a slow breath and walked over. Rebecca. She looked up. You came. I sat down across from her, keeping my expression neutral. I was curious. She studied me for a moment. I know you probably think this is some kind of setup, but it's not. I wanted to talk. I raised an eyebrow. Talk? About what? How you tormented me in high school. How you called me a whale in front of the entire class. She winced. I deserve that. I leaned back in my chair. So, what is this, Rebecca? You suddenly feel guilty? Or is this about the job? Her fingers tightened around her cup. Both, if I'm being honest. I scoffed. At least you admit it. She sighed. Look, I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't if I were you. But high school. I was a terrible person back then. And I know that. But the truth is, I hated myself more than I hated anyone else. I blinked, caught off guard. What? She let out a bitter laugh. I spent years trying to be the perfect, popular girl. But I was miserable. I took it out on other people, on you. Because you were different. Because you didn't care about fitting in the way I did. And that made me angry. I stared at her, unsure of what to say. She exhaled. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I've spent years trying to be a better person. And when I walked into that interview, I didn't even recognize you at first. But when I realized who you were, I knew exactly why I wasn't going to get the job. I didn't deny it. She sighed. I guess I just needed to say it. That I'm sorry. That I regret everything I did to you. I studied her carefully. For the first time, she looked real. No smugness, no arrogance. Just a woman who had made mistakes and was finally owning up to them. I took a deep breath. And what do you expect me to do with that? She shrugged. Nothing. You don't owe me anything. I just wanted you to know. I sat there, staring at her. This wasn't how I had imagined our final confrontation. I had expected her to deny everything, to make excuses. Instead, she was taking responsibility. And the strangest part? I believed her. For the first time, I saw Rebecca Adams not as my tormentor, but as someone who had been broken in her own way. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Maybe I never would be. But for the first time, I felt like I could finally let go. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Rebecca's apology lingered in my mind long after I left the cafe. I should have felt victorious. I had gotten my revenge. I had made her face her past. But instead of satisfaction, there was only unease. She had looked different that night, not just physically but in the way she carried herself. Gone was the cruel, confident queen bee who had humiliated me in high school. The woman who sat across from me had been almost fragile. I didn't know if I could forgive her. But I also didn't know if I wanted to keep holding on to the hate. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying our conversation in my head. Did she really change? Or was this just another manipulation? I wasn't sure. But I did know one thing. For the first time in years, Rebecca Adams wasn't just the girl who had made my life hell. She was human. A week passed, and life went on. Work was busy, my team was thriving, and I was feeling more accomplished than ever. But then, an email landed in my inbox that made my stomach twist. Subject: reconsideration request. From Rebecca Adams. I hesitated before clicking on it. Dear, my name. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me last week. I understand that my past actions don't make me deserving of your forgiveness, but I wanted to reach out one last time. I know I didn't get the job, and I accept that. But if there's any way to prove that I've changed, not for the sake of the position, but just as a person, I'd like the chance to do so. Either way, I wish you the best. Rebecca. I read the email 3 times, my emotions tangled in knots. Was this a trick? Or was she actually trying to make amends? I tapped my fingers against my desk. Rebecca wasn't asking for the job anymore. She was asking for something else. A second chance. I had spent years fantasizing about ruining her life the way she had ruined mine. And I had done it. But now, I was faced with a question I never expected. Was revenge enough? Or was it time to move on? I stared at the screen for a long time before finally typing my response. And as I hit send, I realized that no matter what happened next, whether I forgave her or not, this chapter of my life was finally coming to a close. Maybe that was the real victory. 6 months passed. Life continued, and so did I. Rebecca's email had thrown me into a whirlwind of emotions, but in the end, I had responded with a simple message. Rebecca, I don't know if I can ever forgive you. But I also don't want to carry this weight forever. I hope you find what you're looking for. Take care. She never replied, and I never reached out again. I had spent so much of my life thinking about revenge, about proving something to the girl who once made me feel small. But in those 6 months, I realized something. I didn't need her suffering to validate my success. Rebecca didn't get her dream job, and I didn't regret that. But she also didn't hold power over me anymore. I was finally free. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I spotted a familiar face across the street. Rebecca. She was standing outside a bookstore, talking to someone, her posture relaxed, her smile genuine. She looked happy. Not triumphant. Not fake. Just human. I could have crossed the street. I could have spoken to her. But I didn't. Instead, I turned away and walked in the opposite direction, a weight I hadn't even realized I was still carrying finally lifting off my shoulders. I had won. Not because I had ruined her life, but because I had finally let go of the past. And as I stepped into the night, I smiled, because for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward, not back.